From the brutal Hundred Years' War to the Crusades that shook the world, the Middle Ages were defined by commanders who reshaped kingdoms through strategy, courage, and sheer force of will. Today, we're diving into the stories of 8 of the most legendary generals of the era, from knights and kings to an unlikely farm girl who led an army. First up is Edward of Woodstock, better known as the Black Prince, one of the most feared commanders of the 100 Years' War. As the eldest son of King Edward III of England, he earned his reputation while still a teenager. At the Battle of Crécy in 1346, at just 16 years old, he commanded part of the English line. His disciplined longbowmen tore through the French cavalry, securing a stunning victory. A decade later, he cemented his fame at Poitiers. Though outnumbered and facing the French king's full army, Edward used the terrain and defensive tactics to trap his enemies. His longbowmen and dismounted knights held firm, and in the chaos he captured King John II of France, himself one of the war's most dramatic moments. His campaigns, known as chevauchées, were destructive raids across the French countryside designed to break morale and resources, leaving a legacy of brutality. Though he died before his father and never became king, his victories made him a legend, a symbol of bold generalship and the power of English longbow warfare. Next, we have a leader who wasn't a general in the traditional sense. Joan of Arc was never a knight or a trained commander, but in practice, she led as boldly as any of them. Born in 1412, she claimed divine visions and convinced the Dauphin of France to let her support his armies when the 100 Years' War seemed lost. What she lacked in formal rank, she made up for with conviction, strategic insight, and an incredible ability to inspire men who had given up hope. Her defining moment came in 1429 at the Siege of Orléans. French captains had hesitated for months, but Joan demanded action. Carrying her banner, she rode at the front and urged the assaults that finally broke the English defenses, lifting the siege in a turning point for France. Soon after, she fought at Patay and escorted Charles VII to Reims, where he was crowned with Joan by his side. Captured in 1430 and executed the next year, her short but brilliant career proved that leadership and vision could rival any amount of experience. Then there's Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, the most powerful ruler of the early Middle Ages. As king of the Franks and later crowned emperor of the Romans in 800, he built an empire that stretched across much of Western and Central Europe. He's remembered as both a conqueror and a unifier. His longest and most brutal struggle was the Saxon Wars, which raged for 3 decades from 772 to 804. The Saxons repeatedly rose in revolt, only to be driven back again and again. A turning point came in 785 at Paderborn, where their leader Wittikind finally submitted and accepted baptism, a moment that symbolized the forced Christianization of Saxony. South of the Alps, Charlemagne was just as decisive. In 774, he crushed the Lombard kingdom, took their iron crown, and styled himself King of the Lombards, the first Frankish ruler to wear 2 crowns. His legacy went far beyond war. Legal reforms, support for learning, and new systems of rule laid the foundations for what would become the Holy Roman Empire. Of course, no list of great generals is complete without Genghis Khan, born as Temujin around 1162. He wasn't just a general, but the ruler of a vast empire. The son of a minor tribal leader, he grew up in poverty after his father's death. Yet through sheer determination and ruthless skill, he united the fractured Mongol clans. As a commander, he revolutionized warfare. Speed, intelligence networks, and strict discipline allowed his smaller forces to outmaneuver larger, more established states. In 1211, at the Battle of Yeholing, his cavalry shattered the Jin dynasty's massive army in northern China, opening the way to capture their capital, modern-day Beijing. But his genius was more than just tactics. He promoted men based on merit, not birthright, enforced unwavering discipline, and expertly absorbed conquered peoples into his army, strengthening his forces with every victory. By his death in 1227, his empire stretched from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea, proof that Genghis Khan was more than a conqueror. He was a general who reshaped the world. From the east, we turn to one of England's most famous kings, Richard I, better known as Richard the Lionheart. His legend comes not from ruling at home, but from fighting abroad, especially during the Third Crusade. Richard was rarely in England, spending only a few months of his reign there, but on campaign he was larger than life. In 1191 he captured the strategic city of Acre after a long siege. Later that year he won a decisive victory at Arsif, where his disciplined cavalry broke through Saladin's forces. Richard's courage was undeniable. He often rode at the front of battle, personally leading charges that inspired his men to follow him anywhere. Yet this bravery came with costs. His constant wars drained England's treasury, and on his way home from the crusade he was captured, forcing his people to pay an enormous ransom for his release. Despite these flaws, his reputation as a crusading warrior king has endured through the centuries, a symbol of knightly valor. And who was Richard's famous rival? None other than Saladin, one of the most respected commanders of the medieval world. Rising from a Kurdish background, he united Egypt and Syria under his leadership, forging a powerful state that could finally resist the Crusaders. His defining triumph came in 1187 at the Battle of Hattin, where he destroyed the main Crusader army and went on to recapture Jerusalem, a moment that shocked Europe and launched the Third Crusade. Saladin's strength lay not just in his battlefield skill, but also in his patience and strategy. He used sieges, controlled vital water supplies, and used careful timing to wear down his enemies rather than risking everything on reckless charges. But what truly set him apart in legend was his reputation for mercy. When Jerusalem fell to him, he spared its people from massacre, allowing them to be ransomed, instead a stark contrast to the bloodshed of the First Crusade. Even his enemy, Richard the Lionheart, came to respect him as a worthy opponent. Now, for a commander you might not know, but definitely should, Jan Žižka of Bohemia. This veteran soldier was one of the most innovative commanders of the late Middle Ages. He rose to prominence when his homeland was thrown into religious and political turmoil. Facing Crusader armies that vastly outnumbered and out-equipped his followers, Žižka pioneered the use of the war wagon. These were heavy wooden carts, reinforced with shields, pikes, crossbows, and early gunpowder weapons, creating mobile fortresses on the battlefield. This brilliant tactic allowed ordinary townsfolk to resist and even repel charges from Europe's most feared knights. At Vitkov Hill in 1420 he defended Prague against a massive Crusader army, winning against overwhelming odds. Even after going completely blind later in life, Žižka continued to command from the front. Remarkably, he never lost a single battle before his death in 1424. His career remains one of the most extraordinary in military history. Finally, we have William Marshal, often called the greatest knight that ever lived. Born a younger son with little inheritance, his prospects were slim. Yet through his incredible skill with a sword and lance, he earned both wealth and renown on the tournament circuit. But his greatest moment came in his 70s, an age when most knights had long since retired. In 1217, Marshal led the English forces at the Battle of Lincoln against a French invasion. His decisive cavalry charge broke the enemy lines, saving the young King Henry III's crown and securing the entire kingdom. Beyond his prowess in war, he served as a wise and authoritative regent, guiding England through a dangerous period. His life embodied the ideals of knighthood, loyalty, leadership, and unmatched skill in battle. When he died in 1219, even his rivals acknowledged his greatness. That's all for this video. Which of these legendary generals impressed you the most? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Thanks for watching.